Martie McNabb, it's delightful to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on our little storytellers and the photo. I've been smitten with your program, Show and Tales, for a while, and I'm just so excited to have you be our guest here today to talk really about that larger scope of that thoughtful connection to things. And we at Ponga, of course, think a lot about photos of things and of people and places and events, but it starts with a deep appreciation for the thing. Can you tell me a little bit about what got you into this?
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Barbara, for your invitation to join you and connect with your community. And yeah, I started my first business called Memories Out of the Box, which I still do to an extent. I'm a personal historian and visual artist, or I say I'm a legacy artist. And I work with my clients' photo, document, and memorabilia archives with the goal of taking all of these things from their various places, both digital and physical, and creating a visual narrative from those things.
I
So
see.
I tell stories with other people's things. That's what I've done for almost 20 years. But as we know, and probably the people who are watching this know, the field of personal history and the field of photo management are relatively new. So I found when I started Memories Out of the Box almost 20 years ago that people had no idea of what what this was, what the they had absolutely no sense of, well, oh, you scan things, you digitize that, like they were grasping because they didn't understand the concept. So I decided that a good way to get to be known, because as a photo manager, or like I say, I call myself a legacy artist, people need to get to know us, like us, remember us, think of us, trust us. So what's the best way to do that is to uh, invite them into our lives and to ask them to tell their stories. Photos and things have a way of inspiring people and getting the sparking people's memory of I was just looking at a bumper sticker that said the best things in life aren't things, right? And it's true, right? But our things can remind us of the best things in our life. And that's usually relationships and travels and connections and stuff. So the things are so powerful to reconnect with our memory and tell our stories.
As you have developed this approach, um, what, how do you, how do you connect the story and the thing?
So as you had mentioned before about a performance, right? And that, a lot of storytelling is performance based, right? And that's what I have friends who've won Grand Slams and the Moth, and I have a friend who's a professional storyteller in Boston, the Boston area, but it's a very different thing than what I do. And so I call my events story sharing. Like you said, the stuff that would happen naturally among people around a table or a campfire or things like that. So it's not performance based. So realistically, I just started inviting people. This is 2012. I just started inviting people to my friends' bars and restaurants when during off hours, and I invited them to bring like the good old fashioned show and tell from elementary school. I just invited people to bring anything and tell its story. And then my friends kept on saying, it's really important to help people know what to bring. And so realistically, Barbara, I just create the space. That's what I do. That's the technique, is just creating a space to invite people in to share the stories of the things that they keep and the stories that those things tell. So
Yeah, so the thing is the event. I mean, your deliverable, as it were, is the
ah,
event itself. Is that right?
yes, yes, that is one of that's my deliverable is the event. And they both are in person. I did about 120 of them in person,
Oh,
mostly in New York City, but
uh-huh.
a few in other places. But then, of course, like all of us dealing with COVID, we had to, learn to, do these
Adapt.
events virtually.
Yeah.
And I resisted it, but they've actually,
I mean, it sounds as though it's, you're really building a lot of empathy and listening skills and engagement at a level that's very different from a poetry slam or something like that, which is the one person does their one performance and everybody sits back and, well, judges.
yes, that's
It's
why I say no, there's no, clap-o-meter, there's no judges, it doesn't have to be a beginning, middle, and end. Look at the object and tell its story like that. And what's been so beautiful is I've seen people like have to look at their photo or the thing that they brought to give them, because people are afraid to get up in front. And that's why I learned to say show and tell or look and listen. You will
yeah,
never be forced to share, but
right,
I encourage them to bring something just in case they feel inspired.
right, right.
I find way too many people who put off telling their story because they're so overwhelmed with the beginning, the middle, the end. Like like they're afraid they're going to miss something, they're going to, and so that in some ways that was what inspired me. And so we got super excited about the idea that of doing these like mini memoirs just through the objects that you keep, because like you had said before, you've got thousands and thousands of photos, hundreds if not thousands of things. So it's like, which one do you pick? What do you, I've seen way too many people miss out on recording stories or hearing stories or writing down stories or doing things because they were so concerned about it being perfect and
Right.
having it so mapped out. So I'm just
Absolutely.
like, so that's why I came up with your life in 30 things, you
Right.
just, but I did have a friend who said, oh, but you should just put a bullet point, not the numbers, because she got herself all stressed out, Barbara. I'm not kidding you.
Oh, I
Poor
know.
thing, she got, we can cause
Virgos.
herself such stress. No, just write the 30 thing. It's just numbers so that you can write 30 things down
Right.
that would tell
Right.
your life story.
Yeah.
So just begin, just
You
do it.
know,
It doesn't have to be a perfect. It's going to be a wonderful gift.
right.
Anything that you're able
Yeah.
to do with Ponga, with
Right.
your life in 30 things, with what we keep challenge, it just began. And I've had story sharers who shared stories that they'd never shared with anyone
I'll bet.
before, and people, I've gotten, you know, notes from people saying, this might have seemed so minor to you, but it was such a gift to me to be able to have this opportunity to share. So it's as you said, my goal in this is to create community and connections, and and to encourage people not to worry about being perfect. Growing the community outside of the events. I have done a few like series where I have a series called Our Stuff, Our Stories,
Hmm.
that I offered, and that was like a 3-week, program that it allowed for deeper connections and all of that ongoing. And then I have another series called Their Stuff, like all the stuff that you inherit from people. Their
Mhm.
stuff, our stories. So, and I'm in the process of working with some alumni associations. So that is the goal of my events, is to do that, um, is to have the people who come make deeper connections with one another, and then also with me. And I'm doing a family event. Actually, I'm working with somebody on, bringing your family. Do you know your grandparents? The stories of the things that are around your grandparents' house. Do they know the stories of your things that you have in your room? Or do you know your parents' stuff? Or, things like that, so that we'll have a way to connect across generations, because we're always like looking at others, walking into their homes or going into their Zoom rooms and seeing the things. So I'm like encouraging people to do that. So you saw, like, there was just a thing up. It was from last year, but it was from the New York Times that said, what grief looks like, what, memory looks like.
Yeah.
And it basically is the stories of things.
Yeah. Just breathless. I'm very touched by your work with with families in grief, and in really looking deep and hard, wide-eyed into those challenges after a loved one's passing.
Yeah.
Counter to this pressure of, you know, the best in things in life aren't things, decluttering and all of those kinds of moments,
Yes.
to find ways to honor that. Tell me more about your approach with that.
Yeah. Yes. So I was so delighted. I don't know if delighted is the right word, but it was such a relief to connect with the Let's Reimagine community. Um, it's a .org, and they're they were doing a lot of in-person events about end of life. So it's Let's Reimagine End of Life, but it
Mm.
really is Let's Reimagine Life,
Mhm.
because in reviewing our life, in, looking at our life, at considering our life and being intentional, we can have a more beautiful death, and
Mhm.
help people through that process.
Mhm.
So I actually have one, as you know, through the not around 9/11.
Mhm.
So I have it in multiple places, but it's up on the Let's Reimagine site as
I see.
a way to honor um, uh, the loss. I was in New York City during 9/11. As I mentioned, I was a teacher, as a high school biology teacher, and I was at school when this happened. So, and that's another thing, Barbara, that we've talked about, is that there are going to be times where you actually don't have a physical thing. You don't have a physical thing. And so at my events, I often welcome people to not to it, you can just describe what it would have been,
Right.
what image you had, because so many of us, no matter where we live, have a idea. There's something in our minds that we remember about that September day. So I invite people to just describe what
Yeah.
image comes to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ponga, yes, it seems like a pictures thing, but I'm like, but you can take photographs of things like as easily, and talk about them, and tell the stories, and through Ponga as well. I hadn't thought, sort of like when I told people bring an object, and they were like, and I said, or a photo, because they didn't think a photo meant an object, but it's usually a physical thing. But I said you can bring it on your device as well. But we all
Yeah.
have these ways of, like, blinders on. So this has been very eye-opening to think about that in a new way.
Yeah. And I wanted to circle back to kind of where you see this going. from here, and how I can help, what you're looking for from from the outside world coming in, and where these kinds of things can be.
Yes. So I think we've talked about the how people begin businesses or come up with an idea, right? And there's so much many unexpected things that happen, you know. So I always like I was just reading something from a favorite book, and it said, I'm making a commitment for next year at a particular hour, and I have to say, well, you know, like my grandmother did, God willing, and the creeks don't rise, right? So I did not see this coming when I started Show and Tell 10 years ago. I didn't see creating a community of people where I train them how to host these events as ways to market. I didn't see my I didn't know the power that these events, the connective power that these events would have. And, you know, but then I saw like every single one, the in-person ones, every single one, people stayed after and connected. And I was just like, I'd gone to other storytelling events, the Moth and other things like it. And it's like the performance was over, everybody got up and left, and it was just like, wow. So I didn't know that, but I feel like I've always been looking to build my own community, build those connections and community, and find those people that I can support and they can support me. And the whole idea, like Kathy Nelson from the Photo Manager said, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So that's what I've come to realize. And of course, we're dealing with not only the pandemic of COVID, but the pandemic of loneliness and isolation. So my hope is that this will continue to go out, and I'll host events, and my community members will host events. You had mentioned your mother has dementia, and I've never done this at a memory care place before, but one of my colleagues did at the Association of Personal Historians. And the daughter of her mom came, and they brought some old things from the childhood home. And the mom just lit up and told all the stories. And afterwards, the daughter, came up to my friend and said, "Thanks for giving my mother back to me, even if only for 10 minutes." And that's what I hope for the future.
Wow. That's incredible. That's a wonderful place to stop, but I want to make sure that people know how to reach you. You are Martie McNabb at showandtales.com.